The Arlington County Board is now in session. And welcome to the May 16, 2020 County Board meeting, which we are again holding virtually as we have been because the safety of our staff and our residents requires that we hold virtual meetings. And we're doing this based on the governor's executive orders, legislation that was adopted by the Virginia General Assembly, and the County Board's Continuity of Operations Ordinance adopted in March, which allows us to do this. Before we begin the meeting, though, we do need to adopt a resolution. It's basically the same as we did last month. We just need to continue to do this. The resolution sets out the basic legal basis for conducting an electronic meeting. And under our state law provisions and our local continuity of government ordinance, and it finds that the items on the agenda that we've got today are eligible for an electronic meeting in accordance with those legal bases. Do I have a motion to adopt this resolution, colleagues? Mr. DeFerranti? You're on mute, Mr. DeFerranti.
Thank you. I'm glad to keep each of you on your toes this morning. So moved. I move we adopt the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor, please say aye. Mr. DeFerranti?
Aye.
Ms. Crystal?
Aye.
Mr. Dorsey?
Aye.
All right. And Ms. Garvey? Aye. All right. So the motion passes. We are now all set to go with our meeting for today, our regular meeting. And I'd like again to welcome everybody. We've got public comment speakers here waiting to speak, and just a few words to everybody. If you're waiting to speak, please keep your phones and your devices muted until you're called. We try to do that too. And there is a moderator who can mute you, but cannot unmute you. So when you're ready to speak, please hit the unmute button. And if you're calling in by phone, that means press *6. If you're using a computer, there's a little microphone button to click on the bar. So you click that to make sure that you're able to speak. And we're not able to see you. Monday we'll get so we can do that. But we are able to hear you. And you, of course, can hear the meeting through your devices that you're listening to. And you may be watching on TV. If you're watching and monitoring this on several different devices and ways, please make sure those are all on mute so that when you speak, we don't get the sort of background noise. We also have, I believe, our Spanish language interpreter here with us for public comment period of the meeting only. And if our interpreter is here, would you please announce and introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Laura Castro. I'm going to be your Spanish interpreter. Buenos días a todos. Mi nombre es Laura Castro y voy a ser el intérprete de español.
Gracias y buenos días. It's nice to have you with us again, Ms. Castro. All right, and then for speakers, when you're done, please leave the call, and you can certainly continue to watch us either on the live stream or our cable channels, Comcast 25, 1085, or Verizon Fios 39 and 40. So with that, we'll begin with our public speakers, and Madam Clerk, if you could call the first two. So everybody get ready with your muting and unmuting, and we look forward to hearing what people are saying today. Thank you.
Okay, Madam Chair, our first speaker is Eileen Jones.
Thank you. Ms. Jones.
Ms. Jones, if you are on the phone, press *6 to unmute.
Are you able to?
Yes, we can. It's fine. Good morning.
Good morning. So I just unmuted through *6.
That's right.
Great. Good morning, Ms. Garvey, Mr. Dorsey, Ms. Crystal. Good morning, Ms. Garvey.
I think you have another device on, perhaps, that you're listening. Can you turn the sound off on that one? Maybe you're.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. I had the TV on. This is my first time. And
okay. You can pop it back on when you. That's fine.
So I was calling. I am an Arlington County resident, and this coronavirus is really, really affecting me. I'm not going to get political. I'm just going to go with the question that I had here. My question is, I am asking on behalf of all of the tennis players in Virginia, if you would consider please opening up the rec centers and the tennis courts. Tennis is a sport that can be played with safe distancing. The court is 78 feet long by 27 feet wide. The U.S. Tennis Association has released safe play guidance. I've looked through the internet. California, New York, Connecticut, North Carolina, Georgia, New Jersey, Maryland, Rhode Island, Florida, Illinois, Texas. All those states have opened up tennis courts. Maryland also has, and there's a lot of tennis players out there. There are also tennis pros who are suffering. They want to get back to work. We can play this sport safely, and I'm asking on behalf of all the tennis players in our state if you would consider opening up the tennis courts. There is guidance from the USDA on how to play, which also includes like use of balls, and it's a non-contact sport. People are a certain distance away, so that is my request to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jones. And what we usually do for public comment is we take all of the comments and then we will come back and answer your questions. So we will address this. You are not the first person to ask us about this, and we will address it after we hear all of the speakers. And thank you again for coming and speaking to us today.
Thank you, and everybody stay safe, please.
Yeah, you too. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Allison Van Valkenburg.
Ms. Van Valkenburg. Hi.
Hi, thanks for having me. My topic is the same. So I was just saying, unlock the courts because the risk benefit, I think, isn't a positive for having lost.
Yep, thank you. Usually, Ms. Van Valkenburg, usually we only take one speaker per topic on the consent item, so that we can get through everything and hear everybody. If you've got anything, a different topic, that's fine. If it's this one, we will address tennis when we come back and make our comments.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yep. Stay tuned. Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Danielle Mikulski. Daniel Mikulski, excuse me.
I think Mr. Mikulski.
Okay, Mr. Mikulski, if you're on the line, please unmute.
Mr. Mikulski, are you with us?
Okay, it doesn't look like he is here. We will move on to
back. We will circle back. Go ahead.
Our next speaker is Jeff Elder, followed by Bernard Byrne.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Good morning.
Great. Good morning. So I moved into a property bordering on Zachary Taylor 6 years ago, and I've got a great appreciation for Arlington parks, just in general, but as a result of that. Fell in love with Zachary Taylor and its huge trees, and last year became an Arlington Regional Master Naturalist, which gave me a new appreciation for plants and wildlife we have in that park. And also, I'm now the park steward for the park. And one thing I realize is the precariousness of the native plants that live there and the soil they depend on. One silver lining in this stay-at-home period, with many activities being off limits, is that people are rediscovering the parks and just the simple joy of walking in them. And at the same time, I think the plants are being loved to death in some cases by activities that go beyond just walking and playing in the streams. One particularly damaging activity is the creation of new mountain bike trails by people looking for new creative, engaging outlets. And I totally understand this since I have two children of my own. And finding activities where they can occupy themselves for hours on end has its great appeal. But the damage being done to the landscape can really be lasting. Plants are being trampled, soil compacted, dirt dug up to make jumps and bumps. And I recognize how much fun that must be and can be, but this is not private property, and our protected natural space is limited. And I used to participate in Mid-Atlantic Off-Road Enthusiasts, which is a mountain biking group. They were always meticulous in their dealings with park officials and landowners about new trail building. It was not taken casually at all. It took lots of time to plan out routes that wouldn't encourage erosion. Building new trails needed input from park authorities and the community at large. So using your parks is one thing, but creating new trails that damage what plants are left in the wilder areas really jeopardizes the what makes the park special.
Mr. Elder, your time has elapsed.
Hi, Mr. Elder, thanks. Sorry. So we do,
Okay,
we
thank
do
you.
keep you to 2, but we totally understand. We've heard this before, and we'll be happy to address this or have our staff address it at the end of our speakers.
Great.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mr.
Our
Byrne.
next speaker, followed by David
Sorry.
Kennedy.
Sorry,
I'm
Matt. Sorry for
muting.
jumping in there. We can hear you.
Oh, hello, yes. I'm talking again about the COVID emergency and about the ability of the county to take emergency measures and issue orders without the approval of the governor. Now, I've spoken to this several times. I've called Mr. Schwartz. I've not called, but I've written to Mr. Schwartz about this. There seems to be a general impression that the county can't do this if the governor has specifically said that non-essential businesses, certain ones, can stay open. You know, if they do social distancing and things like that. The problem is the governor's order says that that businesses, non-essential businesses, can stay open if they have less than 10 patrons. It doesn't limit the number of other people, delivery men, staff people, etc. Therefore, people can, not congregate. They kind of have to if they're working together. So that's spreading the virus. Now, the point is that the correct code is 44.1.46.21. At the last board meeting, Mr. McAuliffe-Isaac said 44.146.19. That one regards powers of local jurisdictions. 21, which is the correct one, says declaration of local emergency. Under that, if you read that closely, as I've pointed out, this does not restrict the governor. This does not restrict the county to be under the approval and control of the governor. Now in Maryland, the county executive of Montgomery County recently said, regardless of what the governor said, he's keeping it closed because of the crisis. Arlington needs to be able to say this. Further, Arlington needs to be able to close those non-essential businesses, just like DC and Maryland has. It doesn't require the cooperation of other jurisdictions. If they want to, they probably will if they know they have the ability. But the point is, Arlington needs to protect its own citizens. Because this is kind of ridiculous to have businesses open and people just walking to each other and things like this, walking next to each other, just because they have only less than 9 patrons. They can have many others. People at mattress stores, we're sitting on the mattresses.
Thank you,
Mr. Byrne, your
Mr.
time is up.
Byrne. Thank you very much. We appreciate your concern for public safety. I know this is a big issue for you. It is for many of us, and we'll talk about it when we get to the sum up at the end. Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Our next speaker is David Kennedy, followed by Audrey Clement.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is David Kennedy. I'm a home missioner from the United Methodist Church, the director of Girard House, and an Arlington County resident. First, I want to express my condolences to the board and the family of Eric Gutschall. I got to know Eric last year as I started to learn the ropes of Arlington County and advocacy around important issues. Eric took the time to learn about my concerns and made me feel welcome to express my voice and faith in the public square. Second, I'd like to raise this question to the board. What does Arlington County have in place to ensure that the most vulnerable don't slip through the cracks during the COVID-19 pandemic? This includes those who live alone, are the most isolated, don't have technology to attend virtual town halls and board meetings, have underlying medical conditions, and are the most food insecure. I have 2 friends, Jack and Mike, who are amongst the most vulnerable. They are doing as well as possible considering the situation. However, I suspect there are hundreds, if not thousands, in the county who are in a similar boat as Jack and Mike. I appreciate the hard work and intentional communication the board has done since March. However, going forward, I hope I can get regular updates from the board specific to the question I've raised, which I can then share with Jack and Mike. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kennedy. We will we'll give you some information when we come back around. Thank you. Next speaker.
Our next speaker, Audrey Clement, followed by Jim Hurst.
Welcome, members of the board and the county manager. I'm Audrey Clement, independent candidate for county board. A letter to the editor in this week's Mount Vernon Gazette deplores misguided stream restoration projects in our region. According to author Ross Simmons, a Fairfax County environmental consultant, letter to the identified the Upper Donaldson Run and Gulf Branch project in Arlington County. He said the biggest problem with the so-called natural channel design approach to stream restoration in the greater Washington, D.C. region is that it is planned and implemented in completely the wrong places. Small interior forested, upper headwater streams, and wetlands. Natural channel design is mainly applicable to large streams, rivers, especially the kind one finds in the American West. Applying it to small order upper headwater stream channels of the deeply dissected fall zone of our area is a misuse of the methodology, a misunderstanding of eastern fall zone hydrology and stream geomorphology, a sure recipe for failure, a mismanagement of public funds by inappropriately targeting sediment control projects in places with low levels of severity storage funding in space, and an unacceptable loss of replaceable native wildlife and landscape. Stream construction projects in the Little Honey Creek watershed of Fairfax County embody the worst elements of these misguided land use projects. According to Suzanne Sunberg, the science is clear. Privatizing stream restoration has perverted the original intent. The process as currently practiced in Arlington and elsewhere is incredibly destructive to holistic streams and riparian ecology. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clement.
Okay, our next and last speaker is James Hurst.
Mr. Hurst.
Hello.
Good morning.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning. From my personal experiences and the experiences of many others driving and walking in Arlington, the behavior of bicyclists has deteriorated from irresponsible to reckless endangerment of themselves, of their children, of all Arlington residents who use Arlington streets, sidewalks, trails, and public open spaces. Most of this behavior occurs during recreational riding over public transportation infrastructure that was never designed for that purpose, but has been repurposed as open space because little or no usable recreation open space is available to residents of infill redevelopment. That is a direct result of more than 30 years of new urbanism as Arlington's sole planning paradigm. Arlington's trails are especially dangerous from social crowding and high-speed, reckless riding by bicyclists. Currently, Arlington's police are not in the schools and not in the courts. Arlington's sheriff's deputies are not in the courts and don't have to supervise jail visitors. DPR employees don't have to manage, officiate, or otherwise supervise activities in closed parks. I and others see no enforcement of traffic ordinances related to bicycles, e-scooters, and skateboards. Consequently, I and other Arlington residents hold Arlington government responsible for injuries and vehicle and property damages resulting from reckless endangerment by bicyclists. There's little or no mention of multimodal safety in the local media, only reports of accidents. Again, what's occurring has crossed the line from irresponsibility to reckless endangerment. Goodbye.
Thank you, Mr. Hurst. Goodbye. Madam Clerk, do you think, let's try for Daniel Mikalski one more time to see if he's joined us.
Okay, Mr. Mikowski?
All right.
I do not see him.
Yep. All right. That's fine. Thank you very much. I think that's our final speaker. Yes, then?
Yes, that is correct.
All right. Great. Thank you very much. All right. I got to go back. So our first two speakers, Ms. Jones and Ms. Van Valkenburg, came to talk about tennis courts and their desire to have them opened up, which we completely understand and have heard from many people. We are at this point actually looking at how we can reopen our parks safely. And I guess I will see if our manager would like to talk about that just a little bit and then see if my colleagues have anything they'd like to add. Mr. Schwartz, would you like to talk a little bit about the challenges we're facing with opening the parks?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. We are exploring right now how we would go about reopening some of the parks and fields. And there's two challenges we face. The first one is something that regards staff. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it right now, but we have our staff working in a different kind of setup. And so we're going to start to reschedule people so that they'll be able to go back to the service they normally provide. At this point, we're targeting some point in the first part of June to at least open some of the courts that were talked about and take a look at some of the other facilities. I think the last thing that we're going to look at opening, and that's probably pretty far into the future, will be some of our playgrounds. But in the meantime, some of the more open spaces like tennis courts and fields, we're going to try to open up some point during the first part of June. So I would just ask people, I know that they're impatient. We need to figure out some staffing issues and also some safety protocols. Dr. Varghese, our public health director, is offering us advice about the best way to go about doing that. And we'll get to it probably early in June. So that's my update for right now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schwartz. I know it's hard because the weather is perfect tennis weather. Do any of my colleagues want to comment on the issue of parks and tennis courts at the moment? Right?
Madam Chair.
Seeing none. Yes, Mr. Dorsey.
I think Ms. Jones and Ms. Valkenburg, what we are affirming is that we understand that tennis, for one, is one activity that's available in our public parks that can be performed safely in accordance with social distance guidelines. We fully validate and understand and agree with that. And I'd just like to point out that as we move towards any sort of reopening, the covenant that we have to create is that we in government have to make sure that information is widely available for everyone, how they can practice their recreational activities safely. And then ultimately, we're going to have to rely on everyone to follow those guidelines so that as we reopen, we don't create clusters of potential spread. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dorsey. Anything more? All right. I will move on then to, I think we'll take both Mr. Elder's comments about the issue of mountain bikes in our parks, which we have heard and which is a big concern, and also with Mr. Herr's comments, because I think they come under the general rubric of trying to enforce good behavior in our parks. And Mr. Manager, I'm going to come back to you again. One of the issues Mr. Herr's brought up is that, our parks, he doesn't see parks people and police officers and thinks maybe they're not really doing anything. I think they're working pretty hard, and I know we've worked hard to repurpose our employees, and we're trying to balance everything. And again, the whole issue of how to enforce good behavior is a major one right now. And I wonder if you want to speak to that a little bit, and then again, I'll offer my colleagues to see if they want to comment. Mr. Schwartz.
Right. I think that you, Madam Chair, you picked up on a few of the points. First off, that I wouldn't want anyone to be under the impression that our police are somehow have free time on their hands. The exact opposite is true. Even the school resource officers that were in schools have been repurposed to do a lot of very important work related to the virus. I'm happy to go into excruciating detail on that. As far as the question about biking and scootering, I think if you look outside, or if you've been outside, you will notice a virtual absence of scooters. I don't have all the statistics with me, but I think that over 90% of the scooters that were here previously have simply gone away. And bicyclists, I can't speak for all bicyclists, but I think that we hope that they practiced good behavior. And the bicycle lanes themselves have been a little bit crowded. I've noticed a lot of people exercising sort of their own self-policing in that area. So anytime anybody sees anything specific that looks like it's endangerment, we encourage them, rather than simply saying something, they can call us and we'll do our best to follow up on it.
Can you, that number is,
yeah,
remember?
We encourage people to call 703-558-2222, which is the non-emergency police number.
Thank you. Again, that's 558-2222. And then you can just confirm if I'm correct on the mountain bike issue. I know that's difficult. It's happening in a number of our parks, and I believe we're in there trying to do repairs, trying to move, sometimes putting even boulders in the way to kind of prevent this from happening. I think by and large we're thinking it's fairly young children, and we're trying to find ways to let them know and their parents know this is not helpful. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, Mr. Schwartz, at all.
Yeah, and I think what we have found, unfortunately, is mostly kids in middle school, but we have done exactly what you've said. We put a number of boulders in place, tried to put up some fencing. We've made a lot of progress on that. It doesn't mean that there won't be the one-off cases where that's happening, and that's where our park rangers are doing our best to try to address that. Again, I would encourage something that I think is really important, a personal responsibility on the part of kids and adults to make sure that they're behaving, as one of the speakers said, the best way possible to protect our precious resources.
Absolutely. Thank you. And if you see it happening, calling the 528-2222 number, we do try to get people out there if we can. Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. Colleagues, anything you'd like to talk about our parks and safety and people trying to exhibit good behavior?
No.
No? All right. Thank you so much. That brings us now to, and thank you, Mr. Elder, for coming in. I did want to thank you for being a park steward and caring about our parks and everything you're doing. We really appreciate it. We actually have to depend a lot on people like you to keep our parks going, because we can't be everywhere at once. Thank you. That brings us to Bernie Byrne and concern about the county not taking all of its authority to make people, close down our businesses more thoroughly than the governor has asked, and be more strict. And we've had a lot of back and forth. I don't want to get into citing legal verse. It does get back a lot to the whole enforcement issue. And I think I will welcome my colleagues if they would like to make some comments, because we all have been working very hard on this. And I'll just sort of set it up saying that with a pandemic, it's really important that we cooperate across our borders, because we could completely shut down, but if our neighbors don't, and all people have to do is hop over the border, which sometimes might be a few blocks away, they can have different interactions and different experiences and bring the virus back. So cooperation is really important. I know we've all been working on this. Would any of my colleagues like to speak to this?
Madam Chair, I think your summary was exactly the right one, that it's not about, at least as I see it, the public health pursuit here is not about the invocation of a legal code that would place us differently than our neighbors. Exactly as you characterized it, that cooperation is essential, not only with our fellow Northern Virginia jurisdictions, but the district in Maryland, because within our rather small boundaries, we will not be able to control the spread of this virus alone, no matter what legal action we may or may not be able to take, just as ourselves. So we've all been working really hard. I know you, Madam Chair, our manager, public health director, and each of my colleagues to stay in tight coordination with our regional entities around us. And I continue to think that is not only the right, but really the only approach to manage this through as effectively as possible.
Thank you. Yeah, I think voluntary compliance is absolutely crucial, and we need to work on that. If you just tell people absolutely what they have to do, they're they're going to be pushing against. We really want people to be voluntarily complying and come to a consensus about what it is we need to do and do it with our neighbors. And we're all working really hard. The manager, I know Mr. Dorsey's working a lot with the Council of Governments and doing more coordination that way. So there's a lot of work going on to try to actually do that. And I'll just say shutting us down like this, boom, right here, doesn't help if we don't bring everybody along. So we're working to bring everybody along, and that's really hard. Mr. DeFranti or Mr. Dorsey, anything to add?
I'll just say briefly, I think I agree with you that getting deep into the weeds of the legalese is not the right approach. I actually think it's worth saying verbally what we have communicated a lot this week to add to Ms. Crystal, which is we've been leaning in and forward on more restrictions. And that's what led, I think, to the right policy step for our health and safety of Northern Virginia staying in phase 0, which I think is, unless we keep everybody safe, that's the best thing for our residents and then eventually our economy, because we don't want to be loosening and then tightening if we have a flare up. So we've actually on this, we've been leaning forward and really trying to make sure we're as safe as we can. And so that, I think, is the big picture as far as I'm concerned.
No, thank you. And I'll just check, Mr. Schwartz, you're free to jump in if there's anything you want to add at this point.
I'll pass. Thank you.
That's just fine. All right. Thank you. Thank you all. All right. So that brings us to David Kennedy. Mr. Kennedy, thank you for coming from the United Methodist Church, concerned about the most vulnerable. And also your comments about Eric Gutschall. We all miss him very, very much. And thank you for that. He was a great guy and is sorely, sorely missed by all of us. So we are doing quite a bit. I think I'll kick it off a little bit and then invite my colleagues to add anything that they would like to. So your two friends, if they've got specific needs, they can call 703-228-1300. And that is a general number that is available for anyone having issues with housing, with food, and concerns about their health. We are setting up quite a food distribution system, which I may ask the manager to talk about a little bit, to try to make sure that everyone in Arlington who needs food to eat has it. And it extends the gamut. I think you discussed that a little bit. It's not only, it can be older people that can't go out and need help getting groceries in, but are financially secure. It can be people who have been unemployed and don't have money to get the food that they need. It's the whole gamut, and we are working very hard to make sure we reach out to people, including those who are isolated. That's why we have the phone number. I believe we've started putting up signs in the median, actually, and we do it in English and Spanish for people to see. So even if they don't even have particularly a lot of connection with communication, they'll see that and know that they can call that number for help. There's the Arlington Volunteer Corps for anyone who wants to volunteer and help. There are all kinds of ways to volunteer. We are working very, very hard. And I may ask Mr. Manager when we get to if you're able to estimate the amount of money we've been putting into our safety net so far. And Mr. Kennedy, if you stay for the next item, which is our consent items, we will be approving even more. And we're not only worrying about our most vulnerable citizens, we're worrying about our most vulnerable businesses. And we're trying very hard to make sure everybody gets through this crisis so we're all together on the other side and can rebuild. It's a huge challenge, and it is commanding, I think, most of our attention for all of us actually right now in what we're doing. Colleagues, would anyone else like to speak to this?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Dorsey.
So yeah, thank you. And in addition to food assistance for Mr. Kennedy and anyone's benefit, the eligibility of people to get assistance during this time is not just limited to food. It also includes cash assistance to help them with rent or other necessities of life that they are having issues keeping up with due to unemployment and other COVID-related impacts. And as you said, the gateway for people to access that is the phone number of 228-1300. That said, despite the fact that our food distribution and food delivery services, I want to underscore that that's available as well for people who are not able to get to those distribution sites. We have also substantially ramped up the ability for people to have meals delivered to them through both direct government services and, more importantly, our partnerships with nonprofits, and then a great coordinated effort of people in our community who are doing a wonderful job of helping neighbors. So all of this is a coordinated approach to meet the very concerns that you raised, Mr. Kennedy, but we recognize despite how robust this has all been, there are always going to be the potential for people to fall through the cracks. So if you ever encounter any of them, please, please, please widely promote that number that Ms. Garvey mentioned so that we can provide individualized assistance to meet the needs of people where they are during this most difficult time.
Thank you, Mr. Dorsey. And again, it's 703-228-1300. Thank you. Colleagues, Ms. Crystal.
Yeah, just to promote one other resource specific for Mr. Kennedy, I think that phone number is going to be absolutely the best one. And I've seen throughout my own neighborhood here in Douglas Park, we've got median signs in English and Spanish, exactly as you mentioned, Ms. Garvey, with that number. But for Mr. Kennedy, who is an advocate and a champion for vulnerable people, a great way for you to learn more about the whole panoply of responses, which we've touched on a few here, but they are by no means comprehensive, because delivering healthcare, food, basic financial assistance, housing assistance, and others has been the top priority of this county government throughout the pandemic. There are surely ones that we're missing that may be relevant to those that you care about and are advocating for and are serving in your ministry. And so I really want to urge you to go to Arlington's COVID-19 response page, relief page. If you just go to arlingtonva.us, you'll find it at the top of the banner, but the full address is arlingtonva.us/COVID-19, which will have a summary of all of these different programs that my colleagues have referenced, as well as more. And importantly, there's also a box there where you can subscribe for updates. We've had emails going out at least daily, sometimes more often, launching everything from our new walkthrough clinic site in partnership with the Arlington Free Clinic and Virginia Hospital Center to expansions of the food network that my colleagues so effectively described. And that's really one of the best ways that you can stay apprised of what's going on, both to help relay that information to those you're ministering to, but also exactly as Mr. Dorsey said, to be able to see where the gaps are. We have tried to be as comprehensive as possible, and to the extent that we have succeeded in that, it is because of the advocacy for many of our community members. The PTA leadership, for example, who were able to point out some of the ways that families who need food assistance may not be served through our usual channels that have helped us improve that effort, or recognition of the needs specific to emergency financial assistance by some of our advocates, the people they serve, being able to highlight some of the changes in our programs that we needed to make to be able to get that assistance to more people. So we are absolutely reliant on folks like yourself who are working directly with those who are high need, both to get information out, and then as experts once in everything that we're offering to help us understand where the remaining gaps may be. So just again, wanted to urge you to go to the website. Please do sign up for those email updates so that you can see those new programs as they launch, and help us identify where the gaps may be.
Thank you, Ms. Crystal. Mr. DeFranti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, each of your comments covered everything that I had a list and everything that I wanted to mention. I will just say, thinking of the two individuals you mentioned, that we are united as a county government and that we have to be persistent about serving those who are most vulnerable. This is not going to be a short-term challenge, and appreciate the partnership of you, Mr. Kennedy, and so many of our residents who are stepping up to that challenge. So thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Mr. Kennedy, you may want to stay and watch the consent item. We'll have some more. Mr. Schwartz, was there anything you wanted to add?
Well, first off, beyond echoing everything that you said, at some point, a lot of this costs money. And so the board has, in the last 7 or 8 weeks, along with the funds that you've made available to me and my contingent, we've allocated an additional $100,000 to the Arlington Food Assistance Center, over $300,000 to Thrive, which is our frontline organization that provides rental assistance for people who literally are on the brink. Also, we have a small business grant program where applications are still being accepted till midnight tomorrow. So get your application in. And in addition, we've seen some real creative efforts on the part of the community. You know, the Community Foundation has provided about $750,000 in grants, and some of our corporate neighbors, for example, I think Amazon has purchased an uncountable number of meals from Freddy's Beach Bar and Grill And there's just a lot of creative things going on out there. So I would encourage people, if you have an idea, go with it and let us know, because there's a lot of creativity out there.
Thank you. And actually also, I think wherever you are in the county, most likely there is a neighborhood listserv, a neighborhood Facebook page that you can do. There are all kinds of things springing up. There's Arlington Community Corps has started, which is trying to connect people around the county. PTAs are doing incredible work. It's just amazing to see what is going on. And if you have any desire to get involved, there is something for you, because there is a lot going on. And as the manager said, if somebody's got an idea and they don't think it's happening, go for it, because it's taking everybody doing everything they can to fill in all the little gaps that we've got, and we're trying really hard, but we can always do better. So thank you for your work and caring about your two friends. And that brings us to Audrey Clement, who spoke about the, and Audrey, your connection was really, at least on my end, very, very difficult to understand. I believe what you were talking about was stream restoration. And we will see something about that in our capital improvement program coming. I know from past experience and emails and discussions I've had with people, there is some difference of opinion about what's the proper way to restore streams and how we should be doing that. And I understand that there are different points of view. And again, that will come out with our capital improvement program, I think. But that CIP is going to be greatly reduced because of all of the other issues we've got going on. Is there anything anyone would like to add about the issue of stream restoration in our capital improvement program at the moment? Okay, good. Thank you very much. And then Mr. Hers, we addressed your comments a bit when we were talking with Mr. Elder about behavior in our parks, and we certainly appreciate how important our parks are. All right, I think that brings us to our consent agenda. And Madam Clerk, I think we've had some items removed from the consent agenda. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, yes. Items 16, use permit amendment for Alice West Fleet Elementary School. Item 24, which is the permanent continuity of government ordinance. And item number 27, which is related to CARES Act funding, have been removed from the consent agenda.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, could I have a motion to adopt the consent items minus items 16, 24, and 27, please?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Mr. DeFerranti?
Aye.
Ms. Crystal?
Aye.
Mr. Dorsey?
Aye.
Ms. Garvey? Aye. All right, our consent items pass 4-0. Thank you all very much. And as per usual, I have a few comments to make on some of the items. Our consent items are on consent not because they're not important, or sometimes they're maybe not majorly important, but they're fascinating. It's interesting the things we learn, but they are not controversial. And any item that seems controversial or needing discussion, we remove from consent, as we did today, removing 3 of the items. So I'll just take a few moments to go over and highlight just some of the items we did adopt. So with our adoption of the consent items, we approved an agreement with the Arlington Free Clinic that gives the clinic 2 strands of the dark fiber from our own county's fiber optic network, which we call Connect Arlington. And that dark fiber is going to connect the clinic with Virginia Hospital and enable the hospital and the clinic to share important information about patients and allow the clinic to better serve its low-income and insured patients. So this is another way when we're trying to work with our most vulnerable and improve the medical assistance we can give to our more vulnerable folks. More good news on Connect Arlington. We also approved an agreement that allows universities to connect to the network. Now, the goal here is to create an innovation platform that supports research and education at no cost to the universities. They will be able to license up to 4 strands of dark fiber for 10 years. And the agreement will extend the reach of Connect Arlington, and it's going to extend us to the University Research and Education Network, which goes throughout the world, which is pretty exciting. We also have been working, as I mentioned, with helping our small businesses, and we've started this grant program. And that is to help small businesses and nonprofits who are having a really hard time with the pandemic and help them to make it through to the other end, as I mentioned. And that fund is continuing to grow. So today, we appropriated $216,500 from our 3 business improvement districts. Roslyn, Crystal City, and Ballston bids all put in money for the program, and that fund is now at $1.2 million. And as our manager mentioned earlier, the grant program is accepting applications through midnight tomorrow, the 17th. And these are for grants up to $10,000 to businesses and nonprofits with fewer than 50 employees. They can be used to pay employee salaries and benefits and for other business capital and operating expenses directly related to COVID-19. So if you're interested, applications again are open through tomorrow at midnight, and you just go onto our Arlington website, the economic development page, and you can find that. The board also accepted 2 grants from the Virginia Department of Behavioral Health and Development Services. The first will support a 6-month pilot program for adolescents and young adults with serious emotional disturbances and serious mental illness in the county. And the second is a behavioral health equity mini grant that's to help provide training to the county's human services staff to provide support to individuals who identify as LGBTQ and 2. Finally, we acted today to waive payments due on county affordable housing loans through December 31st, 2020. The borrowers who choose to participate must agree to not charge late payment fees to their tenants nor evict tenants from their properties for COVID-related non-payment of rent through December 31, 2020. We believe this program will help keep low to moderate income tenants in their homes, and if they've lost income due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The program would waive up to $2.3 million in county loan payments through December 31st, 2020, and this will support rent payments for about 1,600 households facing hardship and or other emergency needs right now. The loans will continue to accrue interest, and the borrowers will still have to comply with all of the requirements of their loan agreements, including repayment. So that's just a quick summary of some of the items on our consent agenda. I believe we're now ready to move to our regular hearing items, Madam Clerk.
Yes, our first item is item 41, site plan number 447, which is a site plan amendment to increase GFA and make changes to building massing, circulation, location, and building services, architectural design, green building certification, and affordable housing contribution, and other modifications, necessary to support the proposed development at 11th and Vermont. Proposed development application located at 1031 North Vermont Street.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Manager, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Ms. Bird is on the call with us. I don't have anything specific to add other than I think that we're continuing to have discussions with the applicant in this case, and there were a few issues to work out. Samir, is there anything you wanted to add?
Nothing further to add. We're anticipating being able to bring this back to the board next month, just finalizing some additional details with the applicant.
Thank you. In other words, your recommendation, Mr. Manager, is to defer the site plan.
That is correct.
I believe. Thank you. Mr. Dorsey, would you like to make a motion?
I'd be happy to, Madam Chair. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the county manager's recommendation to defer consideration of this site plan amendment to the June County Board meeting.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much, Ms. Crystal. Mr. Dorsey, is there anything you'd like to say about your motion?
I think it's all been said. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. All right. Anybody have anything they want to say right now? I don't think so. I think we're ready to vote. All right. All in favor for the motion before us, please say aye. Mr. DeFranti?
Aye.
Ms. Crystal?
Aye.
Mr. Dorsey?
Aye.
Ms. Garvey? Aye. All right. Motion passes 4-0. So that is deferred for the moment until the our June 13 meeting. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, could you call the next item, please?
Item 42 is a memorandum of understanding by and between the County Board of Arlington, Virginia Hospital Center Health System, and the Arlington Free Clinic for the joint creation of a COVID-19 walk-up sample collection site at the Arlington Mill Community Center at 909 South Dinwiddie Street. Dinwiddie Street.
Thank you very much. Mr. Schwartz, would you like to speak to this a little bit, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, we're fortunate to have reached an agreement with Virginia Hospital Center and the Arlington Free Clinic to partner with us on the walk-up facility at Arlington Mill Community Center. This will allow people who need to have tests done for COVID. Again, they're still going to need at this point to have a doctor's order or a prescription. It allows them to go to the Arlington Mill Community Center, and the MOU lays out the responsibilities that the county has about what we'll provide. For example, we're going to provide personal protective equipment for all the personnel on the site. We're going to make sure the cones and the cones and stakes and signage are all put up, and we'll continue with the custodial services. Virginia Hospital Center, as they have done on the Quincy Street site now for, I think it's been about 8 weeks, will be providing some staff, collection kits, couriers to take the items to the lab. And then our great partner at the Free Clinic is going to be working to make sure that people get referred there and that people can register, which is really important. We've had a big surge in people interested in the Medical Reserve Corps. So a really excellent partnership. And I would hope that you would approve the memorandum of understanding so that we can get it signed. We've a little secret, we've been doing it already, but don't tell anybody, but we'd like your approval.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager. And then I just want to verify with you, if someone thinks they need to be tested, they don't have a doctor, they're not sure what to do, I think they can call that 703-228-7999 number. Is that correct for information?
Yes, they can. They can call that number, and somebody who has a question can be referred to someone who will listen to what their symptoms are, and if they meet a certain kind of typology on the symptoms, they can get a referral that they need for testing.
Yeah, thank you. And I believe we've got Spanish language speakers on that line as well, and can access other languages too. Yes. Thank you. Why don't we get a motion on the table, and I'll see if there's any more discussion, if that's all right. Who's ready to make a motion? Whose turn is it?
Happy to do it, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Crystal.
Sure. I move that we approve the memorandum of understanding attached to the staff report by and between our county board, us, Virginia Hospital Center, and Virginia and Arlington Free Clinic for the joint creation of our COVID-19 walk-up sample collection site at the Arlington Mill Community Center, and that we further authorize the county manager to execute the attached MOU, on behalf of the county board, subject to approval by the county attorney.
Excellent. Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. Ms. Crystal, would you like to speak to the motion a little bit?
I'm so glad to have the opportunity to make this motion. This is really a terrific body of work. I think the manager did a great job summarizing who it will serve and how. I think this is very likely the type of critical service that no one of these partners, be it the county, VHC, or the Free Clinic, could have instituted alone. And I think it really is going to be a critically important piece in reaching one of the hardest hit communities by the COVID-19 crisis, which is the 22204 area. So I just really want to commend our staff who are leaders in this, and certainly thank wholeheartedly our partners at Virginia Hospital Center and the Free Clinic for making this a reality. And I'm not too angry, Mr. Manager, that it went ahead and started operations earlier this week ahead of the formal board vote.
Thank you, Ms. Crystal. Any other comments colleagues would like to make?
Just
Madam Chair.
Okay, Mr. Dorsey, I'll come back to you. Mr. DeFerranti, take it away, and then we'll go back. We'll finish up with Mr. Dorsey.
Sure. Well, just briefly, we've gotten questions about equity-related concerns with respect to how we're serving our residents, and I'm thrilled to support this. And this is what I see as acting to really focus on the most vulnerable in our community. And I was pleased to get actually just a big thank you from one resident who lives near Tyrrell Hill Park and the Arlington Mill neighborhood, which is just up from the community center. So for those who are concerned about it, we are too, and this is a great example of action on it. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Dorsey?
So as a general comment, this testing site is absolutely in my neighborhood, and I just like to commend the partnership in action as I've observed it. Not too close to see how it's operating, and it's operating very efficiently and very well, thoughtfully cordoned off, but also thoughtfully laid out within the testing facility to just ensure the safety of everyone who is getting tested, everyone who is working to collect the specimens, just really thoughtful and well done, and a re-envisioning of the Arlington Mill Plaza that I don't think any of us ever foresaw when we approved the project, but it's certainly proving to be quite versatile. I did have a question, I would love for Mr. Schwartz, if he could, to just talk a little bit about testing generally in the community and how what's the funding arrangement for actually getting the tests paid for at this collection site as well as the VHC site at the Buck property, at the former Buck property.
Great. Mr. Schwartz, if you'd like to answer that, and I was going to talk, but I think you would do it better, how we're trying to build our testing capability kind of brick by brick. We're, getting all kinds of pieces put together to build up a robust testing system here in Arlington. Mr. Schwartz.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Dorsey. The testing at the Arlington Mill Community Center right now has a capacity of 50 people per day, and that's been met each day this week. Also, over on North Quincy Street, the capacity originally was around 100. I think we're up to about 180 now there. So those two sites, 230 tests going on every day. They've been filled. As Ms. Garvey referred to, we at this point, we're really on our own. We need to figure out how to add to our capacity and literally brick by brick, in other words, reaching out to individual companies and labs, building our own capacity. We have the opportunity in the next coming week, we'll be getting some rapid testing equipment and samples in that a limited amount that we'll be able to use for our first responders to make sure that they do not need to spend any more time than is necessary in quarantine so they can get back out and serve the residents. And we're spending a lot of time exploring what kind of testing options there are. I'm sure that people were paying attention to the testing technology that's actually used at the White House. The FDA came out 2 days ago and said that has a 50% false negative result, which is unfortunate. So we're being very careful. We have a lot more work to do on that. As far as paying for it right now, we are using some of the funds we've set aside for emergency relief on that. I know that there are some provisions in the federal legislation that would allow for reimbursement at some point in the future, but at this point, we're not focused on that. We're focused on getting whatever resources we can. But I'll tell you, we have a very long way to go on that.
But at least we've started.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Schwartz. I just think for everyone's situational awareness, it's important to note that the approach to testing is different, unfortunately, across all 50 states. And we are in a position in our state where a substantial amount of the responsibility for testing, not only conducting it, but arranging the relationships with laboratories, not to mention funding, is the responsibility of the locality, but still under, unfortunately, the strict guidance that we are only collecting specimens from people who present with a doctor's order to get tested. So we don't yet have that public health availability of testing to find asymptomatic spread. And unfortunately, this is a case where each jurisdiction in the Commonwealth is left to really ramp up on its own.
Thank you, Mr. Dorsey. I think you set that out well. I would say we're working hardest. The county organization is working hardest on trying to make sure our most vulnerable get through, and trying to get take care of this testing issue, which is really tough because, as you said, we're all on our own, and that's a big burden for a small locality. But we're stepping up, and we're going to do it. But it's not easy, and it's taking a long time. And thank you, Mr. Schwartz, for everything you and your team are doing on this. Thank you. All right, are we ready to vote on this? I think we are. All in favor, please say aye. Mr. DeFranti.
Aye.
Ms. Crystal.
Aye.
Mr. Dorsey.
Aye.
Ms. Garvey. Aye. All right, motion passes 4-0. Thank you very much. And I think we're all happy, Mr. Schwartz, that you went ahead and got this going. Thank you very much. All right, Madam Clerk, is there anything more to come before the board in our open hearing?
No, there is not.
Thank you. All right, that concludes the open portion of our hearing. We are going to go into closed session. So colleagues, I need to make a motion here. I move that the county board convene a closed meeting as authorized by Virginia Code sections 2.23711A8 for the following purposes. Consultation with the county attorney concerning the authority of the county board and the county manager during the pendency of the state and local emergency declarations and the actions that can be taken in response to the emergency, and to protect the public health and safety and the public meeting requirements of the Freedom of Information Act, the recent budget amendments pertaining to electronic meetings, and the county's continuity of government ordinance that apply during the pendency of local and state declared emergencies. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Mr. DeFranti.
Aye.
All right, Ms. Crystal.
Aye.
Mr. Dorsey.
Aye.
Ms. Garvey. Aye. All right, we are now in closed meeting, and this portion of our, excuse me? All right, I think we're good. We're going to go into closed meeting now. Thank you. board is back in open session. Colleagues, I need to make a motion. I move that the members of the county board certify that at the just concluded closed session, 1, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under Chapter 37, Title 2.2 of the Code of Virginia, and 2, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered by the board. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Dorsey. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Garvey.
Aye.
Ms. Garvey.
Yes. Aye.
Sorry. Mr. DeFerranti.
Aye.
Ms. Crystal.
Aye.
Mr. Dorsey.
Yes.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, is there any more business to come before the board today?
No, there is not.
Thank you very much. All right, colleagues, everybody, we are now recessed and we will reconvene again on Tuesday, the 19th at 3 p.m. Everybody have a good weekend. Stay well. We're adjourned.
Thank you.